Nick Krauser here from undisclosed but not difficult to guess European location. So I've been hanging out here for about a week now, me and Steve, working on new product which will be revealed in detail over the course of the next couple of weeks. It's a product I'm quite excited about. We've been working away about 5-6 months on it, and it's just coming together like Hannibal from the A-Team says, don't you just love it when a plan comes together. We just saw the final PDF earlier today. We just got to do a little bit of shaping, a few little bits of polishing here and there, and then you're going to hear all about it. So I thought I'd do a little video now that some of the pressure's off, because I've been thinking work. I haven't really had my mind in the game. But Steve and I, we've been having a few discussions while we're sitting having our lemonade and sit by the river. We've been talking about, you know, society, game, products, things like that. One of the ideas that just we talked about today is Steve said to me, the old Margaret Thatcher quote, "There is no such thing as society." So I remonstrated a little at that. I disagreed, so we had a bit of a discussion about it. So I'll present an idea that came up about day game from that conversation. Now this quote, "There's no such thing as society," from Margaret Thatcher in the mid-80s, is actually usually misquoted. Now it's often used by the left wing, by the Marxists, to present the right wing as evil. Because you'll know in England there's this general cultural meme that you have the evil Tories with their cuts and their callousness and they're in the pockets of the businessmen, whereas you have nice Labour who just want to give us free stuff like NHS and free education. Now I don't want to go too much into a political rant for why that's actually the opposite of the truth, which is what I believe. But this quote is often attributed to Margaret Thatcher, "There's no such thing as society," for her basically saying she doesn't believe there are social links, that everyone should be a rugged individualist, every man for himself, dog eat dog, that sort of thing. Now if you actually read the quote, she said this in Parliament, I believe it was. I think you can find YouTube videos of it. What her quote actually was, I'll not get this word for word, I'm just paraphrasing, was, "It is common amongst the left to say that society should provide for its members, that you should have, say, socialised healthcare through the National Health Service, you should have socialised education, and that the government or society funds and provides these services for its people." Now what Thatcher was saying is like, no, there is no such thing as society, there is only individuals. That every single pound that the government spends must be raised from a tax on an individual. And therefore, when the left wants to say there's no such society pays, what they're really trying to do is hide the theft involved in paying for this thing. They're making out like there's this big like fairy in the sky that just delivers services and nobody is compelled to pay for them or provide for them. So that's what Thatcher said about there's no such thing as society. It's actually individuals. Just as there's no such thing as crime against property, there's just crime against the owners of property. So anyway, we were chatting about this a bit politically, and I was saying to Steve that my model of society is what you might call a biological or evolutionary model, and it is common amongst the left, amongst Marxists, to think of society as a machine. So I'll give you two different metaphors. Metaphor number one would be the factory where they make iPhones. So let's say the iPhone 5, iPhone 7, whatever. I have Samsung, Android, so I don't use iPhones. Now if you imagine a typical electronics factory like this, what would it be? It would be, in my mind, it would be temperature controlled, moisture controlled, probably pH controlled, and everybody will have these like face masks on. You'll have like constant air getting sucked out and cleaned, and you'll have conveyor belts, you'll have precision machinery, and you'll have very set repetitive tasks. So that would be like a software, hardware factory. Now I think this is how leftists view the world. You know, scientific socialism is what they will do is they will say, right, we have a system, we can better understand it. They're almost Fordist, like Henry Ford. Is like, let's tweak this bit, let's change this conveyor belt, let's change the speed of this, let's put these people on this path. And they treat it like it's all very controllable and that it doesn't have consequences. Now, I believe a much better metaphor, and this will come to game in a moment, a much better metaphor for society is a jungle. Think of it more like a zoologist would think, is what you have is you have an urban jungle. So if you think of a real jungle, what do you get? You get a certain set of circumstances, right? So you get the trees will want to get the sun, and they want to get the rain, and they want to battle over soil space for roots. So trees will develop in a certain way. And when you have trees developed in a certain way, what you'll get is then that provides a microenvironment for the animals that live in trees. So you get beetles crawling up and down them, maybe you get ivy, you get like squirrels, well maybe that's a forest, not a jungle. You'll have like birds that make nests in them, you'll have like spiders that climb around the bottom, like the creepy crawlies. So what's happened is, anytime you create an environment with resources, so we're getting a sort of universal Darwinism here, but anytime you create a society with certain type of resources of environment, you'll get multiple strategies descend on this to take advantage of those resources and to eke out a living. And as soon as you get them eking out a living, you will get a herbivore-plant relationship, you'll get a sun-plant relationship, and you'll get a carnivore-herbivore relationship, like predator-prey. And these form little complex microsystems. Now my biology is probably going to let me down a bit here, but let's say you have the squirrel in the tree that's dealing with the nuts and stuff. Then you'll have like the hawks above who are like coming down to swoop and feed on the squirrels. So there'll be a symbiosis between the hawk and the squirrel and the nuts on the tree. And zoologists can analyze that. So within the jungle, there are many, many different little microcosms of relationships. So you have the tiger and whatever the fuck tigers eat, right? You'll have like the snake and the mongoose. You'll have one creepy crawly feeds another creepy crawler, the spider and the fly. And these things are very, very complex. So I think, and they all move, they're dynamic. So sometimes you'll have an overpopulation and then you have a cull. Sometimes there'll be this little genetic or tactical advantage that one side gets, which forces the other side to adapt over time. I think if you look at the urban jungle this way, you'll see it. If you just sit and people watch, like we were doing in the centre of the town, just sit and people watch and look for these little microcosms of behaviour. So look at, say, the tourists coming down, and then look at the hawkers who deal with the tourist trade, like the guys sitting waving menus around to get the tourists in, or the guys who identify their key market of like stag do dudes and they're trying to get them into strip clubs. Or look at the little gypsies going around table to table with their palms up, like trying to get the money. So there's a whole little ecosystem of parasites, well that's perhaps a bit of a normative statement, but like say parasites trying to feed off the hosts, the tourists who have the money. Some of them are found value, some are just pure parasites. And then look at, say, you have the shops, then you have the customers of the shop. So you have the shops trying to entice the customers in, you have the customers walking around deciding which shops to go to. And then you have different negotiations there. Sometimes it's sale week, sometimes it's busy week. So for example, this week I had a lot of problem getting an apartment because it's like the busiest week of the year in this town. So the relationships were changed. So the way this approaches to game is, if you think of, say, day game, is a day gamer is one of these, as it were, parasites on the street. So you have this elaborate jungle environment, the urban jungle, where all these different animals, you know, they've built the shops, they've built the restaurants, they've built the streets, they clean the streets, they put the electric lighting up, they draw the hot women in as tourists or as shoppers. And then what a day gamer is, in a way, is the day gamer is like that little fucking parasite that's just like leeching the blood. Is we're going into these environments and we're just trying to like peel off a woman who's like been brought to us, and we're not offering value to the environment. We're not like building the shops, we're not like, you can walk down the street and you don't even go in a shop. You walk down the street for like a week non-stop and you don't even enter any of the shops except to buy water. So I just thought this was like a fun way of conceiving of day gamers, like that, where these sorts of like these like interlopers are parasites on this complex urban jungle ecosystem. And you think a night game is the same thing in a different context. So I was just saying to Steve, is we went to a nightclub last night, and if you think like the nightclub owner has built the nightclub, he's decorated it, he's put some risk capital in there, and he's trying to get people to come in and spend money. And then you've got people using the nightclub for their ends. So you've got the women go there because they like to dance to the music, they like to get attention off the guys, maybe some of them want free drinks, some of them want to get laid. You have the guys go, who like obviously just all want to get laid. And then so you have everybody using this environment for their own perceived advantage, whether it's the money, the women, the validation, the sex, the getting drunk, getting buzzed, or having a fight even. And then but what they're all doing is they're going into this nightclub environment and they're paying the entrance money and they're buying the drinks. Now, if you think of, say, what me or Steve or, say, Tom would do, which is, I was saying to Steve, like, what would happen if we are just standing outside the nightclub at 2 AM, we haven't even gone in, and we're just trying to pick off the girls as they come out, like night street game, as it were. That is a quintessentially parasitic form of game, because we're literally not even paying the cover charge or buying the drinks. So I mean, there's no grand point to what I'm trying to say here. I'm not saying you should change your game, I'm not saying this is a good thing or a bad thing. I just think it's an interesting intellectual experiment in calibration, in people watching, in mindfulness, is to sit and watch these little ecosystems going on around you. Think of how it affects your position in the world, like which ecosystem do you inhabit? At which point are you the host? At which point are you the parasite? What is that little bit of advantage that you're trying to eke out of the world? Because I think if you become aware of how these things work, what the lay of the land is, and where the competitive advantage is, you will then start engaging your creative resources to find ways of taking what you want from this world. And an important part of taking what you want from the world is to have an accurate picture of it. And I think the jungle metaphor is a lot more useful than the sterile Fordist computer factory metaphor. So there we go, mental masturbation over.